Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Had your food, lunch? I hope all of you are there, alert, not sleeping. Okay, so yesterday we had completed a few of the nerve muscle graph of frog's heart. So today we will continue with few more properties which we are going to learn. Are you all ready
Yes,
to
ma'am.
hear few voices?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So today we'll start with this perfusion graph. Okay. So yesterday we have seen few properties which were depicting, right? Many like autorhythmicity, conductivity, then contractility properties of the heart. So now we will see how, what is the, as I told, those were the common properties for skeletal muscle as well as cardiac muscle, right, which we studied yesterday. Today what we are going to study are, they are the exclusive property or unique properties of only cardiac muscle. Okay, so how, what are they, and how you are going to study them on the frog's heart muscle. So basically these come under perfusion. I told yesterday directly heart was in the frog's body itself or thoracic cage, and the hook was put to the tip of the left ventricle and liver was connected, and that's how you are going to get the graph in yesterday's properties what we have studied. But today this frog's heart will be taken out from the body of the frog by perfusion. The word this perfusion indicates we are going to perfuse the frog's heart, and as I told, frog's heart is having a unique property of extracting oxygen directly from the environment as well as from the blood which is present in the ventricle. Okay, that's why it can sustain the external heat or temperature. Even though it is disconnected from the frog's body, the heart can continue to beat without any supply of other things like how the human heart needs oxygen supply or heart lung machine like that. Okay, so perfusion experiments means the heart from the frog's body is taken out completely, and a Siemens cannula, this same cannula, there is one, I could not find the diagram or the picture to show you people. You will get in the old physiology practical books. Sims cannula will be there, one horizontal with one side tube, sharp end, which will be inserted into the sinus venosus of the frog's heart, and small thread is tied around that, and through that Sims cannula and Marriott's bottle, ringer lock solution will be continuously perfused into the frog's heart, and that will help the frog's heart to beat without aid of any external agent. So this is the perfusion of frog's heart experiment. What we are going to perfuse here along with the ringer lock solution is few drugs, and the ions are put on the frog's heart, and different graph we are going to get. So what are the ions that are used? Basically 1 ml of 1%. The prepared solutions have to be there before you start doing this. So calcium chloride, potassium chloride, sodium chloride, and to study the effect of adrenaline and acetylcholine, you have to prepare them in the concentration of 0.5 ml, 1 in 1000, 1 in 1 lakh, 1 in 10,000, like that. Okay, so this is how the preparation of solutions have to be done before you start doing the perfusion experiments on frog's heart with drugs or ions. So if any one of you become researcher in basic science, if you go for animal experiments, you need to do all this by yourself, right? Those who are having passion about the research can go for this, and even they can become Nobel laureates also. So this graph is not about the perfusion of ions or the drugs. This we are going to study still when the heart is in situ, that is in the body of the frog itself. So this experiment, this graph you will get in the exam also. You have to interpret the graph. This is a graph of heart muscle properties. One of the property which is studied here is autorhythmicity by applying a strenuous ligature on frog's heart. Now you will be just remembering the graph. Here, as you have seen yesterday, this is the sinus venous atrial contraction, then relaxation, then ventricle contraction and relaxation. So this is the normal for 5 seconds you are recording the frog's heart cardiogram, what we tell. After that, a strenuous ligature means it's a thread where the ligature is put at the junction of this is sinoatrium or truncus venosus in the heart and the atria, and after ligating, after a few seconds, what is the pattern of the cardiogram you get is this is called as auriculoventricular rhythm. I will explain in detail, just remember the graph. Then after recording this pattern for 5 seconds, you are going to apply a second strenuous ligature. That is ligature, I told you, is a thread is tied between atria and ventricle, and after a few seconds, again you will see a different pattern of the cardiogram recording. This is called as idioventricular rhythm. Anybody is interested to interpret the graph? Some people's microphone is unmuted. Are you interested to interpret the graph?
No.
Otherwise, you can mute your microphones. Okay, so what happens here is, so if you remember this graph properly, first is normal rhythm, that is called as sinus rhythm. Then comes after ligating or after tying the first strenuous ligature will be auricular rhythm we tell, or auriculoventricular rhythm. After tying the second strenuous ligature, you are going to get the idioventricular rhythm. You must remember the names of each one of this. After tying first and second strenuous ligature, it is no more sinus rhythm, it is atrial rhythm and idioventricular rhythm. I will tell why it is called idioventricular rhythm. So now what happens after tying a first strenuous ligature? Okay, first strenuous ligature you are going to tie at the junction of the sinus, venous and atria, as I have told, which is represented by a white concentric line in the frog's heart. Then you are going to immediately record. Immediately you have to record. You cannot wait for a few seconds or minutes like that. Immediately you have to record the cardiogram, and the rhythm what you get is called as atrial rhythm. This is what they have. Auriculoventricular rhythm means this is purely the impulse is generated here by the atria or auricles. That's why it's called as auriculoventricular rhythm or atrial rhythm. So what happens once you tie the second strenuous ligature? Once you tie the second strenuous ligature is between the atria and ventricles. So you can imagine a diagram of heart in front of your eyes, and that where the junction of atria and ventricle is there. Once you tie the ligature here, that is represented by atrioventricular groove. You can make out a groove in the frog's heart, and this rhythm what is coming out is called as ventricular rhythm or idioventricular rhythm. Now I have stressed first only the difference in the name, that is sinus rhythm, auriculoventricular rhythm and idioventricular rhythm. This interpretation is called as your observation. Followed by this, you have to explain the physiological basis of these different rhythms, right? So what is the physiological rhythm effect or basis behind the first strenuous ligature? Okay, so what happens immediately if you tie the first strenuous ligature, you are getting a pattern of recording of cardiogram, which is called as atrioventricular rhythm or atrial rhythm also. And you will see there is decrease in the transmission of impulse. That's why the recording what you get atrial rhythm is rate is very less or slow in the pattern, and it is comparatively lesser than the pacemaker tissue. I will tell once again with respect to the graph. Now second strenuous ligature, what happens? Here again you are tying a thread between or ligature between the atria and ventricle, and this further prevents the transmission of impulse from atria to ventricle. So further there is decrease in the heart rate, and that's why the cardiogram what you get, idioventricular rhythm, is again more slower in the pattern, right? So the frequency is lesser still compared to the first strenuous ligature. So with this I will show in the graph again. Now if you compare, see the number of contraction, or sorry, number of this atrial contraction and relaxation what you have got in the sinus rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 cycles you have got in 5 seconds. And after you tie first strenuous ligature, there are only hardly 4. Fourth is incomplete, right? So 6 has reduced to 3.5 beats, okay, per 5 seconds. And still more, after tying second strenuous ligature, you have got hardly 2 or 2.5, or it's almost 1.5. That is the rate of impulse generated from sinus venosus to the atria to the ventricle gradually decreased, and there is a reduction in the frequency of the impulses generated. So this graph tells you the property of autorhythmicity. Second property what it tells is sinus venosus in the frog's heart is the pacemaker, because this is able to generate a highest number of impulses, right? 6 impulses per 5 seconds. So this is a pacemaker, whereas in human heart it is which node? Are you there all? Which node is pacemaker in human heart?
SA node.
Yes, SA
SA
node.
node, ma'am.
Yeah, why it is SA node? Why not AV node? Why SA node is the pacemaker? I tell it is AV node. AV node should be the pacemaker, is it not? Any reasons to justify SA node? Anyone?
Generates the highest number of impulses.
Highest number.
Yes. So it generates the highest number of impulses. That does not mean that there are no other pacemaker tissue in the heart. Okay. So here the same property is proved. If sinus rhythm is obstructed, of course, atria will take up the pacemaker function, but the rate of generation of impulse is lesser compared to sinus venosus. That is why sinus venosus is the pacemaker tissue. Okay. So this property, before it was proved in humans, it was done in this amphibian heart. The same property they applied to the human being. Okay. So this is about autorhythmicity and effect of strenuous. These are called as strenuous ligatures. If you perform, you will never forget, because we have performed with our own hands so many times this experiment, right? So you know now what is the observation and what is the physiological basis for this. And now coming to the clinical importance. Why the knowing of pacemaker tissue or rate of impulse generation from the conducting system of heart is important. This you have already studied, right? It is because heart blocks, various degrees of heart blocks will appear in the human body also, human heart also. And as you know, there are 3 heart blocks, different types are there. First and second are incomplete or incomplete heart blocks. The meaning of incomplete heart block is there is no complete blocking of the transmission of impulses, whereas third degree heart block is complete heart block, where the complete obstruction of impulse transmission occurs. Now there are, to name a few, just to refresh your memory, which Dr. Amrit has already told you in detail about the heart blocks. First and second degree heart block most commonly occurs in case of myocardial infarction. You may see where it is called as sinoatrial block, right, in MI patients. Then ischemia of only AV node. Again, it may happen in case of MI patients only, or ischemia of bundle fibers in coronary insufficiency. Whenever there is angina, like partial block of the coronary vessels will also lead to heart blocks, incomplete heart blocks, and any kind of inflammation or infection like myocarditis, which occurs in case of diphtheria or rheumatic fever. You have to remember the disease names, because whenever such patients comes to you, then you will have to think that the person may be having these symptoms or heart blocks. It may be because of MI, like that. You have to coordinate your knowledge with the diagnosis, right? Then carotid sinus syndrome, like digitalis, will cause or impair the AV conduction, or first and second degree Mobitz heart blocks. So this strenuous ligature effect and interpretation of autorhythmicity helps you to understand the property of autorhythmicity as well as the various heart blocks that appear in the heart. Now coming to next graph is refractory period in a beating heart. Means what? Whenever a heart contracts, if you remember the graph of action potential, cardiac muscle action potential, I'm not talking about pacemaker tissue action potential. You must remember in the heart there are two types of action potentials. One is generated from pacemaker tissue, one action potential is from cardiac muscle. So when we talk about this, here it is cardiac muscle action or myocyte action potential. So in this graph, as you are seeing, AS means atrial systole, AD is atrial diastole. So from this point, atrial systole has begun and it ends here, and here this point atrial diastole is beginning, right? This is followed by ventricular systole and ventricular diastole, right? So if you start from this point, when you reach this point, both atrial and ventricular systole and diastole are over, right? So if you give a first stimulus, now please listen carefully to understand the concept. This is important. If any extra stimulus is given in the period just after atrial diastole or beginning of ventricular systole, there won't be any response from the heart. Means there won't be any extra contraction from the heart muscle when the stimulus is in the ventricular systolic period, right? But when you give a stimulus during ventricular, at the end of ventricular diastole period, there will be a second contraction, or this is called as extrasystole. The heart muscle will give response, and that response is called as extrasystole because it is not coinciding with the normal systole. Clear? You understood? Now this is all the basic concept of extrasystole and compensatory pause. Now what is CP? CP here, this is compensatory pause. Before that, I will make once again clear to you. If you give any stimulus, of course in heart, human heart, nobody is giving external stimulus for this. This is an experiment on the frog's heart. When we give extra stimulus during ventricular systole, there is no response. That means the whole cardiac action potential is in absolute refractory period, right? Whereas if you give a stimulus at the end of ventricular diastole, it falls either in the relative refractory period or in the proper action potential firing level. The heart will show an extra stimulus or extra systole. Systole is always followed by compensatory pause. Excuse me. So this picture, just you remember, then now I will explain the this another PESP is post extrasystole potentiation. Means the next systole what you get after compensatory pause is in bigger size. The systole is more stronger, followed by the extrasystole and compensatory pause. So 3 points you have to remember in this graph. One is you will get an extrasystole only when the stimulus falls after ventricular diastolic period, that is complete mechanical event is over, then this extrasystole is always followed by compensatory pause, and post extrasystole contraction is always more potential or more in magnitude, more force of contraction compared to extrasystole. Right, now we'll see the observations again. So extrasystole, whenever, same thing I told you, relative refractory period, if it is there, then only heart muscle will contract or gives extrasystole. So this contraction is called as extra. See, remember, the word is having full meaning in that. It is a systole, but it is extra compared to normal systole. Okay. So next, now why the compensatory pause? The word again compensation. It is compensating the extrasystole pause. That's why it's called as compensatory pause. Now this is because even though the next stimulus, normal stimulus comes from SA node, but that falls in the refractory period of the extrasystole, right? That's why there is no stimulus or no systole occurs that falls as compensatory pause, right? So, are you understanding? Is it clear or is it still confusing for you? It is clear?
Can you explain it once again?
With the graph? Yeah, I will explain, don't worry.
Yes, ma'am.
So, extrasystole means, here I will explain with the graph only. If you give any stimulus during the normal cardiac action potential graph, if you remember, that's why I told you, if the extra stimulus falls in the absolute refractory period of the action potential, it will not give any response. Okay. Now what is absolute refractory period in the cardiac muscle is till the cardiac muscle completes its ventricular systole and diastole, it will be under absolute refractory period. The speciality of cardiac muscle action potential is that the absolute refractory period is a longest one, and it extends from atrial systole to ventricular diastole. Whole mechanical events till the end of the mechanical event, the whole cardiac muscle is under absolute refractory period. Okay, that is why if you remember, any stimulus given in the absolute refractory period will not give any response. Okay, that is why no extra contraction appears. But if the same stimulus, if you give in the relative refractory period, that is end of the ventricular diastole, then definitely heart will respond as a systole, that is called as extrasystole, and this extrasystole is always followed by compensatory pause. Pause means the normal regular sinus, stimulus from SA node will come and fall in this absolute refractory period of extrasystole. Okay, that's why there is no response given by the heart here. It takes a pause. But here the normal cardiac systole is not occurring because the normal impulse is falling in the refractory period of extrasystole. Clear? So it takes a pause. But whatever amount of systole, this stimulus has occurred here, there is some amount of release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and this calcium will add to the next normal impulse which falls here, and that's why this post extrasystolic contraction or systole will have higher magnitude with the help of beneficial effect of the previous contraction which we saw yesterday, right? So three important properties, points you have to remember in this graph is when extrasystole occurs in the normal human heart, right? There are few conditions where the extrasystole occurs which leads to, I told, atrial fibrillation, flutter, ventricular fibrillation, life-threatening causes there. So that is because of this extrasystole, extra pacemaker tissue that comes, the circus movement. There are so many things which is not, you can't understand now at this stage properly, but as you go for third phase, you will understand. You just remember here, the extrasystole occurs whenever any stimulus falls. Stimulus means in human heart, it's always a extra pacemaker tissue that generates an impulse, and that falls on the relative refractory period of this previous systole, that gives rise to extrasystole. Clear? One point. Second point, this extrasystole is always followed by compensatory pause. The word tells it is compensating, right? This extrasystole is compensating here, and that's why there is a pause. And but here the normal SA node impulse is coming and falling, right? But because it is in the absolute refractory period of extrasystole, no systole occurs, only pause occurs, but the calcium which is released will accumulate for the next impulse that comes and gives a systole with more force of contraction or more amplitude of this normal cardiogram. Clear? I hope it is clear. Still we discuss little more things, right? So here that's what I have written. When the next regular impulse falls on the refractory period of the extrasystole, the compensatory pause occurs. Clear? So this pause is greater as more calcium is going to get accumulating here, and that will add to the next contraction, and there you are going to get more height. Okay? So that graph is over now. So you have to interpret the graph, its physiological basis and its applied aspect on the human heart. Three aspects you have to interpret. Then we go for next graph, that is effect of stimulation of vagosympathetic trunk on the frog's heart. Another unique property. See, the extrasystole and compensatory pause you will not get in skeletal muscle or the GIT smooth muscle. That is seen only in cardiac muscle. So that is the unique property of cardiac muscle. So this second one is again unique property where long refractory period is there and vagal escape. This is very, very important, and because of long refractory period and vagal escape, the heart muscle can never be titanized, right? Heart muscle can never be titanized even though it beats continuously from our first breath to last breath, right? So these properties, unique properties, makes the heart a special organ in our body. So what is this vagal inhibition and vagal escape? You have to remember these two terminologies, right? Now, as you see in this graph, first after dissection of frog's heart, we have to identify a vagosympathetic ganglion. There is one ganglion below, situated below heart of the frog, which is having both vagus as well as sympathetic nerves in combination. So, but we can't separate sympathetic or vagus from the trunk or ganglion. So whenever you stimulate vagosympathetic trunk, you are seeing here the vagus nerve continuously you are stimulating the vagus trunk, that vagosympathetic trunk. So what is happening? Here heart has stopped, right? After few seconds, when you are start stimulating vagosympathetic trunk, heart stops, right? The flat line indicates the heart has stopped beating completely. But even though you continue to stimulate the vagosympathetic trunk or ganglion, the heart resumes the beat. This is the part from where the heart starts beating. Even though you continue to stimulate vagosympathetic trunk is called as vagal escape. Escape means, as now you are all running away, no? Keeping the login credentials and you are moving here and there. Like that, vagus nerve, even though we are continuously stimulating, the heart escapes from its effect. So it starts beating. right? It doesn't keep silent for longer time. It doesn't be under vagus inhibition for longer time. It starts beating. This is called as vagal escape. So here I will not explain this part now. Only atropine and vagosympathetic stimulation means when you apply atropine for the ganglion and stimulate the vagus nerve, the heart will never stop here, right? There is no vagal inhibition observed when you apply atropine or this nicotine, right? Because both are blocking the vagus nerve, that acetylcholine. That's why the heart escapes from the vagus effect. So now I will explain what is vagal inhibition and what is the physiological basis why vagal escape occurs. We will see that now, right? So stimulation of vagosympathetic nerve, I told you it is present again in the white crescentic line of frog's heart. The scientist who invented this is Remek, so his name goes Remek's ganglion, which is having both parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves in this, right? So whenever this ganglion is stimulated with the external stimulus, the heart cardiac inhibition occurs and heart stops. This is the first part, right? But if you continue to stimulate with the higher strength of the stimulus, then heart escapes from this effect and the heartbeat reappears. This is called as vagal escape. Now, this is a favorite question in this amphibian graph. What is vagal escape? What is the physiological basis of vagal escape? And why it is important for a heart to have this escaping effect is very important. Otherwise, persons will die. The time the heart stops, person will die. That all you, right? So what is the physiological basis for this, right? So the first and foremost thing, when you observe the cardiogram, heart rate and force of contraction both are decreased in the vagal escape, right? So I will tell, when you compare the normal cardiogram, I told always you have to take recording of normal cardiogram before and after the effect, any effect, right? So if you compare here, force of contraction and rate both are decreased in the vagal escape effect, right? So vagus nerve, when we stimulate, the inhibition occurs, and of course I told vagosympathetic truncatus. Now what happens when the vagus nerve gets inhibited? What are the physiological molecular level changes that are occurring? What you have studied in the general physiology. So first and foremost, the heart stops because increase in potassium conduction at that nodal tissue occurs. So potassium increase means hyperpolarization occurs. So the action potential cannot generate and heart stops either in the like systole or diastole, wherever we apply the, when what position we apply the external stimulus. So this increase in the potassium conductance, cell permeability or the ions permeability at the nodal tissue results in decrease in the concentration of cyclic AMP. You know, cyclic AMP is energy that this heart muscles derives their energy by cyclic AMP, and this is second messenger also. Then this slows opening of calcium channels. Whenever there is decrease in the cyclic AMP concentration, that in turn decreases or slows the opening of calcium channels. And do you know what is the role of calcium channel in systole and diastole of atria and ventricle? So this decrease in calcium channel opening will cause decrease in the firing rate at the pacemaker tissue, right? So therefore the force of contraction decreases. This is the physiological basis of vagal escape, or what happens, why the rate and force of contraction of the heart are less after the vagus nerve is inhibited, even though it resumes normal contraction, right? So next what happens is, vagal escape means heart again stops for a brief period of time and it starts or resumes contracting again. And this is a strong, means for a heart to stop when you stimulate vagus, the stimulus should be strong, right? That means threshold level stimulus. It should not be sub-threshold stimulus. So a strong stimulation abolishes the spontaneous discharge of the heart by those molecular that potassium channel and decrease in the calcium channel opening and decrease in cyclic AMP. But heart recovers automatically. It overcomes all these obstacles, we can say, so that the stimulation, even though if it is continued, the heart starts beating again, of course at a slower rate and force of contraction. That is called as vagal escape. So you have to clearly tell or explain why it is called escape. What is the meaning of vagal escape? You have to explain properly. Then what are the causes of vagal escape now? First and foremost, what is the pattern of this contraction what we see here? After vagal escape, what is the pattern of the cardiogram we get? This is again called as idioventricular rhythm, right? Idio, the word idiopathic, if you remember, idio means the cause is not known, right? So how this ventricular here means the vagosympathetic trunk is situated between the atria and ventricle. So when you block or when you give stimulus to this vagosympathetic ganglion, it is blocking the conduction of impulse from sinus venosus to atria, and atria to ventricle. This blockage occurs, right? So impulse is not able to transmit from atria or SA node to this ventricle. So what happens here? Ventricle, these what beats we are seeing here are generated by ventricle as a pacemaker tissue, right? That is why it is called as idioventricular rhythm, right? So idioventricular rhythm means the rhythm generated by the ventricle as a pacemaker without a known cause is called as idioventricular rhythm. This occurs classically after vagal escape, and the rate of discharge, if you compare with the normal, is very less. Rhythm is significantly lower than the normal. Both rate and rhythm are less compared to the normal cardiogram. Now, they have put forth three important physiological bases for this vagal escape, right? This happens in the human heart also. Now, the first and foremost cause they put is generation of idioventricular rhythm, right? This, you know, the autorhythmicity property of the heart. Whenever there is blockage between atria and ventricle, ventricle will take up the pacemaker action. Of course, it generates the heart rate at lesser rate and lesser force of contraction, but the rhythm generated is called as idioventricular rhythm. This is the first theory that helps in understanding the vagal escape. Now potentiates the theory. Second is depletion of acetylcholine. What happens when you continuously stimulate the vagosympathetic trunk? Because of continuous discharge, you know, acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that is released at the end of vagus. So continuous vagal stimulation, the continuous acetylcholine is released and it gets depleted. You are not giving any time for regeneration of acetylcholine. That's why there is depletion of acetylcholine at the nerve endings, and that's why, and this is again supported by, you know, the enzyme cholinesterase is very fast in degrading the acetylcholine which is present at the neuromuscular junction, and that's why because of depletion of acetylcholine, the vagal stimulation of heart is temporarily blocked and heart resumes its idioventricular rhythm, right? This is the second theory that potentiates the vagal escape, right? Now the third point what they tell is sympathetic dominance. It may be, as I told, the trunk or the node, preganglionic node, what we are stimulating is vagosympathetic. It is both vagus nerve, which constitutes the part of parasympathetic, as well as sympathetic. So both types of groups of nerves are there. So when we stimulate, because vagal nerve fibers are maximum. For example, if in a bundle 80% to 90% are vagus nerve, only 10% are sympathetic nerve. So when we stimulate, the predominant action will be vagus nerve. Over a period of time, you continue to stimulate, there is depletion of acetylcholine. So the stimulation, sympathetic nerves predominate that time. They take override the effect of the vagus. That's why for longer duration of stimulation of vagus nerve, sympathetic effect overrides and it starts stimulating the heart, and that's why heart starts beating again. So these are the three important points. We don't know which one is responsible for this reassumption of this resuming of the heart, even though you continue to stimulate the vagus, right? So what happens? So remember these 3 points. These are the important points which occur in human hearts also. That is why these are the treatment aspects. So if you give adrenaline intracardiac, right? Whenever a cardiac arrest occurs, they give intracardiac adrenaline or noradrenaline injection. So this helps in resuming of normal cardiac beat, sometimes, not always. So one of the theories applied in the vagal escape, right? So whatever points that are studied on amphibian heart are very, very important, that have a lot of application in the clinical diseases of human heart also. So just I will repeat: idioventricular rhythm, depletion of acetylcholine or sympathetic dominance may be the cause for reassuming of cardiac beating, right? Now, okay, this is long refractory period. See, this long refractory period, a vagal escape and that first extrasystole, all are interrelated, the properties, okay. So I told you whole cardiac muscle, extrasystole and compensatory pause, if you give any extrasystole during the relative refractory period of cardiac muscle action potential, it will not respond, okay. Now that time I told absolute refractory period of cardiac muscle is longest, 250 milliseconds, which covers the whole mechanical events of cardiac cycle. That is why this is one of the important protective mechanism of cardiac muscle action potential. That absolute means it is absolute. It will not respond to any strength of stimulus which falls in that period. Okay. So this is one of the very unique property of cardiac muscle. Like it will not respond. How much you make them awake, how much you ask them to read, it will not respond. Okay. So don't extend your absolute refractory period. Be in a relative refractory period. Okay. Which is very short, 50 milliseconds, so that you will respond to our questions easily. Okay. Hope you are all not sleeping. Is it? Any one of your friends? Okay, okay. So
No,
even
ma'am.
yeah, I understand. Online classes are like that only, boring. Okay. Anyways, so remember, absolute refractory period is the longest, a special feature of cardiac action potential. It is 250 milliseconds. It covers all the mechanical events of the cardiac cycle, so that either atrial or ventricular events are uninterrupted by any external stimulus. Clear? Okay. So that's why I have written here, during absolute refractory period, stimulus cannot excite the tissue, whatever may be the strength of stimulus. You should be so much determined, like the absolute refractory period, right? Whatever may be the distractions, you should not get distracted to them. You should concentrate on your studies. Okay. So duration of action potential of cardiac muscle is equal to duration of mechanical events, and that's why mechanical of events of cardiac muscle cannot be merged. We can't merge atrial and ventricular events, right? So all these long refractory period, vagal escape, extrasystole and compensatory pause, all these contribute towards the cardiac muscle will never get tetanized, even though if you give repetitive stimulus continuously. Now, if you remember, in skeletal muscle, if you give continuous stimulation, muscle will go into fatigue easily, right? It gets titanized and it goes into the complete contraction, right? But the heart muscle cannot undergo this because of its long refractory period. So remember, if you forget any other properties, okay, but don't forget vagal escape and long refractory period. They are the most unique and potent features of cardiac muscle, right? So after understanding those properties, we will just move on to the effects of ions. Now, why it is important to know the effect of different ions? You know our body fluid ECF, ICF consists of so many ions. Of that, 3 important are sodium, potassium and calcium ions. In varying concentration, they are present in ECF and ICF. And you know, as our whole body works on this basic property of this maintaining of pH, and this heart activities also depend on the different concentration of these ions. They are not out of this ECF and ICF. Okay. So if any increase in the sodium, hypernatremia, hyponatremia, hypercalcemia, already again Amrit has told you about the ECG changes of this, and he has given one beautiful graph, this ECG changes in different ionic concentration. You preserve that, okay? So that will really help you in electrolyte imbalance when you enter into ICU patients, right? So intracellular and extracellular ion concentration of nodal tissues means pacemaker tissues is very important in regulating the heart rate and force of contraction. Okay. So all ions that alter the heart functions by changing either cyclic AMP and calcium levels are going to affect the contraction rate, force of contraction and heart rate. Okay. So many drugs means therapeutic drugs, whatever a person takes, many of the time they also modulate the ionic concentration of our body or this cardiac nodal tissues, right? So to understand what are the different patterns of these different ions on cardiac muscle, it will help us to understand the side effects of drugs as well as this heart functions, how it alters in different ionic concentration. So here comes the perfusion of frog's heart and to study the effect of drugs. See, we are removing heart completely from the body of the frog and we are isolating it and putting a ringer lock solution, right? So first effect they studied is they put after taking few normal cardiogram events, adrenaline is put. A drop of, as I told, 1 in 1 lakh concentration, a single drop of adrenaline is put on the in the perfusion that SEMS cannula and observe the effect. It is very typical, is it not? If you see there is increase in the rate of contraction as well as amplitude of contraction compared to normal cardiogram. Once the adrenaline is put, the gradual increase in rate and force of contraction increases. So what does it prove? The effect of adrenaline or that is sympathetic nerve stimulation on the heart is it increases both force of contraction and rate of contraction. That's why adrenaline is used for so many therapeutic uses to treat a shock, different types of shocks and cardiac arrest, as I told you, right? This means whatever effect of ions, these drugs, adrenaline, acetylcholine and atropine we study, these are all neurotransmitters that exist in our body, right? Inside. So if we give external supplementation of this as therapeutic doses, what is its effect? That we call it as pharmacological doses. Of course, they are present inside our body at the nerve ending as a neurotransmitter. If there is slight variation in any of these neurotransmitter also, means if there is predominance of sympathetic, if there is predominance of parasympathetic, or this atropine is muscarinic receptor, which is present very much in the heart. So how the heart changes its effect? These graphs depicts that, right? So we see first this adrenaline. So these are the physiological basis. Basically, whenever you should remember adrenaline is stimulated, sympathetic nerve is stimulated, or if you give adrenaline as a therapeutic dose, what is its effect on heart is, of course, it increases all the functions of heart like inotropic, chronotrophic, dromotrophic and bathmotrophic actions of the heart. You should know meaning of each one, which means increase in heart rate, which means increase in force of contraction, which is increase in the temperature, right? So these are the four important components of the heart muscle which increases during whenever you stimulate sympathetic or adrenaline supplementation, right? How this is brought about, the physiological basis. See, remember, whenever a word physiological basis comes, means you have to explain the molecular mechanism or mechanism of action of that particular ion, drug, or that effect or reflex, anything, right? So the physiological basis of this increase in all these functions of heart brought about by adrenaline is that it acts on you know that different types of receptors for sympathetic and parasympathetic. So adrenaline predominantly acts on beta 2 receptor, adrenergic receptors which are present in the cardiac muscle, and this in turn increases the intracellular cyclic AMP at the nodal tissues, and this increase in the cyclic AMP at nodal tissue increases the opening of long-standing, there are two types of calcium channels in cardiac myocytes, slow channels and fast channels. So these long-standing calcium channels are getting opened and they increase the depolarization of the phase of this cardiac muscle, and there is increase in the heart rate. So these molecular mechanisms are responsible for increase in the heart rate, right? So adrenaline, apart from doing all this, it also increases intracellular calcium ionic concentration in the myocardial cells, right? So by its action on beta 1. So adrenaline is having both beta 1 and beta 2 receptor actions. Beta 2 receptor action increases heart rate, whereas its action on beta 1 increases the force of contraction, right? So you should understand this properly, because if you give tomorrow any drug which blocks beta 2 receptor, it is going to decrease the heart rate. If you give any therapeutic drug which blocks the beta 1 receptor, that is going to decrease the force of contraction. So understanding the mechanism of these receptors and their effect is important, which we give more stress in physiological basis, right? So it's clear, effect of adrenaline on beta 2 and beta 1 is how it is brought about and how it ends in increasing heart rate and force of contraction. Now we go for acetylcholine. So the what acetylcholine, it's a neurotransmitter secreted at the ends of all parasympathetic. When we tell heart, it is predominantly vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve stimulation leads to releasing of acetylcholine, and acetylcholine, this decreases the heart rate and force of contraction, exactly opposite to that of the adrenaline, right? So decrease in the heart rate is because there is depolarization or hyperpolarization of membrane, because these potassium channels are open. So increase in potassium influx will cause the hyperpolarization, and this hyperpolarization is responsible for decrease in the slope of this pre-potential that you see in the cardiac action potential. So acetylcholine action is brought about by muscarinic receptors present on the heart. whereas adrenaline is by anyone? Who will tell adrenaline acts through which type of receptors? I hope all of you are alert and listening. Just now I told you
Yes, ma'am.
adrenaline, yeah, acts on which type of receptors?
Beta 2 adrenaline.
Beta 2 receptor.
Only beta 2? It acts only on beta 2, not on beta 1? So
Both,
even,
ma'am. Both beta 1, beta 2.
yeah, it acts both on beta 1 and beta 2. Actions are different. So remember, whereas acetylcholine acts on which type of receptor? Does it act on beta receptors, acetylcholine? You were sleeping at this time. You were awake when I was telling this sympathetic adrenaline. Which type of receptors acetylcholine acts? Nobody remembers?
Muscarinic.
Yes, muscarinic receptors, and the effect is it decreases both rate and force of contraction. The comparison is evident here. So if you see above, the rate and force of contraction is increased after adrenaline effect. After acetylcholine, when it acts through muscarinic receptors, it has decreased both rate, drastically rate is reduced, even the force of contraction compared to normal and adrenaline is both reduced, right? So if you remember the graphs properly, it will help you to memorize better the effects. Okay. So what happens? Acetylcholine, what is the physiological basis, how it brings about this decrease in heart rate and force of contraction is again by acting on muscarinic M2. Here again the types are M1, M2 are there. So M2 receptor is predominant in the nodal tissues of the cardiac muscle. So when it is blocked, acetylcholine decreases the concentration of intracellular cyclic AMP, and this again slows down the opening of calcium channel, and slowing of calcium channel leads to decrease in the firing rate at the nodal tissue, and therefore heart rate and force of contraction are reduced. So you have to, if it is asked in viva or practical viva or theory question, you are supposed to describe in detail the molecular mechanisms like this, is stepwise, then only the physiological basis will be explained properly and the concept you have to make it clear. Okay. Okay. So coming to now the perfusion of frog's heart, its effect of ions. Those were the drugs like adrenaline, acetylcholine, pharmacological doses. Now this is the ions. Like if you see first the few graphs, cardiogram is recorded normal. Then once you apply the potassium chloride solution, I had written 1 ml of 1% potassium chloride, a drop is put on the frog's heart and you can see what changes it is occurring. So potassium causes slowing, decrease in the heart rate and force of contraction gradually, and it stops in diastole, right? The heart has stopped in diastole, ventricular diastole. It continue, and once you start putting the normal Ringer-Log solution drop again, then the heart will resume the normal pattern, right? I will explain physiological basis later. Then in this B graph, you see again normal cardiogram beats for few minutes, and this is the point where calcium chloride, 1% of calcium chloride which is prepared, a drop is put on this perfused heart. Then you can see again slowly the rate is reduced and heart stops in systole or diastole. In calcium hypercalcemia, heart stops in systole or diastole. Anyone who is awake?
Systole.
Yes, very good. So
Systole.
yeah, so graph, see, if you remember the graph, you will never forget it, right? Here the potassium heart has stopped in diastole, sorry, and here in calcium the heart has stopped in systole. Of course, you write so many times heart stops in systole, in calcium, still you forget after some days. But if you remember the graph, it is more evident, our brain memorizes better with the graphical representation. So remember these graphs. So when the heart remains in a systolic phase, that is called as calcium rigor, right? Calcium rigor. Then the third ion that is studied is effect of sodium chloride, right? Now the sodium chloride, when we apply at this point, here it has reduced the amplitude, means force of contraction of the heart is decreased, but the rate may remain same or rate may increase also, right? So the heart rate may increase or remain same, but definitely the force of contraction is decreased. So in hypernatremia or dehydration cases, the sodium will have this effect on the body. So all these three, potassium, calcium and sodium ions. Now we will see what is the physiological basis for this. Now first, taking into potassium chloride, how it decreases the heart rate and force of contraction and heart remains in diastole is, it decreases the resting membrane potential, right? So the action of potassium chloride is on the resting membrane potential. So fibers become inexcitable totally and heart stops in diastole, right? So these 3 points you remember. Heart stops in diastole is okay. How it stops? By decreasing the resting membrane potential only. Leave about action potential. Resting membrane potential itself is decreased, so fibers become inexcitable to any of the next stimulus. This is the effect of potassium or hyperkalemia, right? Then calcium chloride, here it increases the force of contraction and decreases the relaxation time. Systole is increased, diastole is reduced, time is reduced. So heart stops in systole. It remains in a tonic contraction period. That's why it's called as calcium rigor. And it hardly comes back to the relaxation period if you put hyper or more concentrated calcium. So it is not having any effect on heart rate. Means calcium hypercalcemia will not have any effect on increasing heart rate or decreasing, but it makes the heart to arrest in systole. That is tonic. This calcium rigor occurs, right? Then this sodium chloride. What happens when we apply sodium chloride is, it facilitates depolarization. All of us know sodium potassium channels, their function. So they are responsible for depolarization. So it enhances the depolarization of the myocyte. So it increases the heart rate, competes with calcium. Means binding of sodium and calcium, there is a competence, right? Between both of them, competition will be there. So sodium will bind more, means it more depolarization occurs and it to decrease the force of contraction. So if you remember this graph, there was decrease in the force of contraction, but the rate is increased. So sodium chloride competing with calcium, it reduces the force of contraction, but it increases the heart rate, right? Increases the heart rate by facilitating the hyperpolarization. So how you interpret the effect of these three ions on the frog's heart? Seeing this is, first you have to explain the observation of each ion, then you have to interpret the physiological basis of this ions on the how they stops heart in diastole or systole or calcium rigor, how sodium reduces the force of contraction but heart rate is increased. So you have to explain this as physiological basis, molecular level, molecular concepts, That means that you have understood the basic science, physiological science. Depending on this, you are going to build your clinical explanation of cardiac tissue behavior in different solutions or hyperkalemia, hypernatremia, all those shock condition, what happens, coronary insufficiency, what happens, like that, right? So we have come to the end of this discussion of cardiac muscle properties in amphibian heart, right? That is frog's heart. Any doubt? And yesterday your friends have asked to, you better write down hardly only one question is there at the end of the each of this graph, right? So you can refer physiological manual if you are having, and finish off writing of question answer of these graphs. That will reduce your burden of writing journal, because you should start reading for first IA exam. Before that you have to write 100 MCQs on 1st May, which our Amrit sir is preparing. So you have to read whole cardiovascular system. Our aim is you should be thorough with, we are almost completing the cardiovascular system, which is a major system in physiology and most important system throughout the career of any medical person, right? Blood pressure, cardiac output, right? Cardiac cycle, all these are very, very important components of medical person. So whole homeostasis of our body is depending on this. A most important chapter, so we have kept 100 marks this MCQs, and you all start reading, prepare properly. And another way to get yourself prepared for all competitive exams also. This will help in preparation of your exit exam, NEET exam for PG as well, right? So any thing you want to ask? Anyone is having any doubt in the graphs or any other academics thing you want to discuss? You can unmute your microphone and talk. I have completed my talk. All of you are gone?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. So anything you
Ma'am, this
want to ask?
PPT will be available.
Pardon?
PPT will be available on the files.
I don't know. I'll ask our IT people. Anytime
Yes,
it
ma'am.
will be there. Even if you send your email ID, I will send also. There is nothing, right?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other person wants to ask anything? All of you are reading.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, internals will be conducted online or offline?
That is still question for us. We are all just waiting to have offline is better, because we will be able to conduct both theory and practicals offline properly. But if it extends to whole May, then we have to change this to online only. That time it's difficult to have a practical part on online, is it not? Only all hematology practicals are there. So only Viva we can take. Oral in groups, dividing into Microsoft Teams, this small group. We can take Viva of only 10-15 students each on one day. We can fix. We can take online also, but not, we have not decided yet properly. If by May 3rd week or 4th week, if you are coming back, then we can postpone the to conduct offline first IA also. After coming here, I think 8 days is sufficient for you to prepare and write IA exam, because all this time now you know that you have to appear IA exam. Okay. Any time from May 2nd week, as tentatively May 2nd week is the date. So you be ready with the exam, means preparation. We can conduct with online or 3rd week, 4th week, if lockdown is not there, if everything settles down, if you come back to the campus, all of you, we can take offline also. Okay?
ma'am.
Yeah. But from your side, all of you be ready with the preparation of appearing for IA, whether it is offline or online, your knowledge content should be better.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Will those topics that are covered right now be there for IA exams? Like,
Yeah, definitely. If
uh,
offline, definitely we will all this. Theory, you want to know theory? Of course.
yes, ma'am. Theory.
Yes, yes. Theory will be there.
Okay.
All
Okay.
online classes. That's why we are taking online class, no?
Okay, ma'am.
Because whatever
And
time
for
we
all
are
the subjects, right? And this applies for all subjects. This apply for all the subjects.
yeah, definitely.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
So
Okay.
we can't bring April again, no?
Mm.
In your academic 1 year, you are supposed to appear final exam in January, right? 2022. So before that, we can't bring this April again. Whatever portion is covered by anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, it is considered as over. We can't repeat it at any cost, right? So
Yes.
you should be serious in listening, and that's why we are taking all this trouble to take the classes, and we are of course serious. You also have to be, because this time what we are losing cannot come back in your first phase again, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. Still there
Thank
is
you, ma'am.
lot of portion is there in physiology to cover once you come back, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
we can't afford to lose a single day.
Mm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you. That's why I'm telling you, be prepared for this portion of for the first I exam, right? So no more
Ma'am,
doubts or yeah. Yes.
when can we get our ID cards or even the internet access to the libraries of our college?
Internet access.
The
I
online access to the library, ma'am.
Yeah. What like you want to refer to the books
Yes,
online now?
ma'am.
Acha, you don't
I'd
have
asked the
this.
librarian.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. I'd
What did?
asked the librarian, but he said that you'll need your ID cards for that first.
Okay, okay. I will talk to the principal sir, and we'll decide it soon, right?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. No more doubts. So all of you be serious about this online classes, because all portion is going to come for the IA exam, and you read and you can ask doubts in at the end of any online class also. It doesn't mean you cannot discuss your doubts. Clear? Whether it is theory or practical, you can always ask your doubts at the end of the class. Okay? No more doubts. We can close the class. So write down the journals and complete before you come offline to the our campus, so that that will reduce your burden for studying in the exam, I exam, right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I will close this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.